Stop! Time up. How do you like that, huh? Stop! Stop moving!
Bad systems beget bad situations. Bad situations beget bad apples. Bad apples beget bad behaviors, even in good people. How could this happen? Seemingly ordinary Stanford students with no previous criminal record starting to find sadistic joy in the suffering of his fellow man. How can a good person so easily be turned evil? Evil presents itself to us in a parallel dichotomy. On one side, those who commit evil acts do so because they are blindly following and trusting in the orders of a manipulative authoritative figure. On the opposite side, evil can be defined simply as knowing better but doing worse. On one side we have consciousness, and on the other, unconsciousness. Now it is relatively easy to notice that these definitions somewhat contradict each other. Therefore, the word evil takes on two separate definitions, with two separate use cases. Although the exact definition is hard to pinpoint, we know it when we see it, and we know it when we feel it.
Evil is the force that believes that its knowledge is complete, and that it can do without the transcendent. And as soon as it makes that claim, it instantly exists in a place that's indistinguishable from hell. And it could get out merely by admitting its error, and it will never do that.
In a poetic sense, deep within the ninth circle of hell in Dante's Inferno lies a spiritual black hole that no amount of power can satiate. What Dante refers to as cupiditas, or the sins of the wolf, is where sins of the highest degree originate. The spiritual black hole is described as insatiable and rapacious because with these sins, we are using people against their will to satisfy our need, which is the highest form of egoism because for people to suffer from cupiditas, whatever exists outside of oneself has worth only as it can be exploited by or taken into oneself. People are scarcely ever born with good or evil intent, but it is their environment that makes them so. We can learn to be good or evil regardless of our upbringing or any hereditary proclivity. One of the psychological studies that is going to be used is the highly controversial Stanford prison experiment. This study is controversial because, as psychologist Philip Zimbardo admitted, the ethics of this entire experiment lay within a distinct gray area, and the slight interference of Zimbardo himself within the experiment led many people to question the integrity of the findings. I do not aim to portray their findings. I aim to dive deeper into the very moment of certain situations and form an argument off of the indirect findings of human nature, ones that the experiment did not have the intention of looking for. So how can a good person turn evil, and what are the causes that are lying beneath it? In the basement of the Stanford psychology department, 18 students signed up for an experiment. There were 9 prisoners and 9 guards. 3 guards each worked an 8-hour shift at a time. There were 3 prison cells, complete with metal bars connected to the long corridor. At the end of the corridor laid a table for eating, and on the other end in the wall was a hidden camera. The last usable door in the area, a small closet, was turned into a solitary confinement punishment area. The rules were ostensibly simple. Follow the guard's orders for 2 weeks, and you get paid. Purposefully, Zimbardo left out windows, clocks, and any references to time, a marketing ploy often seen with casinos. He hoped the distortion of the passage of time to an expanded present moment would help him get more realistic results. And he might have believed that prisoners would be able to have unrealistic hope if they were able to mentally hold onto and count down the hours and minutes until they could leave. Zimbardo took everything external from the prisoners, all the way down to their very name. Each prisoner was given identical clothes and assigned a number, and was even punished if they called themselves their real name. Whether we realize it or not, we form our identity not only on what we think we are internally, but also everything that is externally around us. The environments that we are comfortable with, our clothes, all the way down to our very name. To dehumanize someone is to take away their power. Through dehumanization, evil acts are facilitated because it is easier to commit an evil act on something who is not even human than someone who the assailant can recognize is living and breathing and has a family, just like them. To be able to facilitate actions of evil, you need to be able to diffuse or displace personal responsibility. The prison guards all wore the same uniform along with reflective sunglasses, and the prisoners were only allowed to refer to them as Mr. Correctional Officer. But why does the collective use of reflective sunglasses facilitate evil? Physically, with reflective glasses, the guards' eyes were covered. The largest sense of our trust for another person originates from the eyes. This is because when we are in conversation with someone, we gauge what the other person is thinking through their eyes, and we have evolved this way because it allows us to receive information, but most importantly, to protect ourselves. On a primal level, if we know what the other person is thinking, or at least we know where his next motive is, we will be able to protect ourselves from attack if we need to. Eye contact shows us trust. Pupil dilation shows us fear or desire as an indicator of emotion, and blinking rate shows us potential stress that person is going through. Well, when you wear reflective sunglasses, all of that is gone. And because people now have no way to judge whether you are trustworthy, they will assume that you're not. So when you force somebody to trust, submit, and follow the orders of someone they do not trust, that in itself is an abusive exercise of power, because one side is suffering for the will of the other. When the prisoners attempted to look the guards in the face, they were always met with the same look of reflective sunglasses. With the eyes gone, the individual personality and responsibility was gone as well. This, coupled with the prisoners referring to all the guards as Mr. Correctional Officer, helped the guards take on a common and unified authoritarian identity, which facilitated anonymity, freed them of personal responsibility, and encouraged the incursion of evil acts. From this information, we can theorize that if you're ever being tortured by an evil act, start speaking and screaming from the heart, even if it is just to describe your name, family, or personality. This will hopefully humanize yourself in the eyes of your perpetrator and cease the evil. A further step of dehumanization is to blame the victim for the actions of the perpetrator. As such, the prisoners were regularly blamed for things that did not even happen. In prison systems, boredom can be exploited by being impersonal, giving boring work, punishing all prisoners on behalf of individual behavior, and demanding perfect execution of trivial tasks. One of the largest implicit detrimental lessons learned from bad systems is admire power and detest weakness. Dominate, don't negotiate. We see an excellent implicit example of this when one of the prisoner's mothers came asking about her son. Instead of saying, "I'm sorry, we may be having some issues," Zimbardo diverts and says, "What seems to be your son's problem?" By saying this instead, he frames the response in such a way that diverts the blame from the power authority onto the individual. On top of that, to lock in his attack, Zimbardo then appealed to the masculine insecurity of the father by asking if his son was man enough to continue. And by using this behavior, replicative of abusive power institutions, he tacitly coerced both the parents back down.
He seems to be a pretty tough kid. Do you think he can handle it?
Of course he can. He is a tough kid.
Lined up the first day, one of the prisoners gave a sarcastic remark to the instructions of the guards, and many of the other prisoners began smiling and laughing. The guards immediately forced him to stop laughing and ruled laughing a punishable offense from here on out.
I see any smiling, it's jumping jacks.
Why is the restriction of laughter so powerful? Well, whether we realize it or not, laughter can largely be used as a form of defense. With everything falling apart around you, humor breaks through the pretensions of persons and place. It's you telling yourself that this isn't real. To laugh at the absurdity of a painful situation is to give yourself a momentary fleeting glimpse of control. And when that is taken away, you can no longer counter an attack by making it ironic. And if you can't laugh at it to negate it, the attack has a much larger chance of going right to your core and hurting your true, genuine spirit. In the letter from the political prisoner George Jackson, he writes, "It is strange that a man can find anything to laugh at in here. Everyone is locked up 24 hours a day. They're afraid, confused, and confounded by a world they know they did not make, that they feel they cannot change, so they make these loud noises so they won't hear what their mind is trying to tell them. They laugh to assure themselves and those around them that they are not afraid, sort of like the superstitious individual who will whistle or sing a happy number as he passes the graveyard." How can you avoid evil influences? How can you be a hero and stand up for those who tremble? Heroism is upholding the highest civil ideas in the face of danger. It takes a hero to stand up to pernicious and evil influences. But heroism often requires social support. We typically celebrate heroic deeds of courageous individuals, but we do not do so if their actions have tangible immediate cost to the rest of us, and we cannot understand their motives. Such heroic deeds of resistance are best sown if all members of a community share a willingness to suffer for common values and goals. The hero must embody a combination of deliberate nobility and potential sacrifice. Heroism has 4 key features. It must be engaged in voluntarily. It must involve a risk or potential sacrifice, such as threat of death. It must be conducted in service to one or more people or the community as a whole, and at the time of the act, there must be no anticipation of secondary, extrinsic, egoistic gain. The easiest way to always deny unwanted influences is this short guide of aphorisms to remember. I will assert my unique identity. Do not allow others to de-individuate you. I respect just authority, but rebel against unjust authority. I will not sacrifice personal or civic freedom for the illusion of security. I will oppose unjust systems. Power said to the world, "You are mine," and the world kept it prisoner on her throne. Love said to the world, "I am thine," and the world gave it the freedom of her house. My name's Glidget, Ronan.